It's time to share secrets and insights from fellow entrepreneurs. If you're looking to grow or start a business and you're a game changer, then keep listening to Avanti Entrepreneur for great advice from your host, Dave Mammano, America's entrepreneur coach.
Hey, Avanti Tribe, Dave Mammano here. Just want to thank our sponsor, Paychex. You know, Paychex, they make it simple for businesses of all sizes to pay and manage their team. They make payroll easy with employee pay options, including direct deposit, checks, pay cards, and so much more. Founded over 4 decades ago to relieve the complexity of running a business so that the owners can focus on what matters most. Above all else, and more than any other company, Paychex makes it simple. Visit AvantiEntrepreneurGroup.com. Go to our partner link and check them out. They're offering you a free month of payroll just for giving them a shot as an Avanti Tribe member. Give them a shot, folks. They really help this podcast to be possible. Really appreciate Paychex. Now, enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast. I am Dave Mammano, your host, and I'm here to help achievers and business owners and leaders and just inspirational people move forward so that they can reach their potential. The way I do this is I interview rock star business movers and shakers, just people helping people to get to that next level in their life. Today I have on the show, great guy, Kevin Lawrence. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave. Really excited to be here today.
Absolutely. And you are a strategic advisor and coach to CEOs and executive teams across North America and internationally, driven by a relentless passion to help business leaders get what they really want in business and life. Kevin has coached clients across a wide range of industries over the past 20 years. His unique perspective working with hundreds of leaders inspired him to write Your Oxygen Mask First, the book that deals with the dark side of the leadership dichotomy and offers 17 practical tips to triumph in business without being trampled in life. Using his deep knowledge of how to take a good company and how to make it great with Rockefeller Habits, with his own methods developed over the past 20 years, Kevin helps leaders to build high-performance leadership teams, expand into new markets, attract profitable customers, and increase productivity and profits. CEOs across the globe count on Kevin to facilitate their strategic planning sessions, to align their leadership teams, and to stay focused. Kevin is a key contributor to Scaling Up, which is Mastering the Rockefeller Habits 2.0, and author of Your Oxygen Mask First. Kevin enjoys participating in motorsports of all kinds, and he lives in Vancouver, Canada, with his family. Kevin, again, welcome to the show. Sounds exciting.
Yeah, it is. Life is good, man. Life is really, really good. There's opportunities and ways to learn and grow everywhere we look, and I get a kick out of it.
Well, I didn't realize until our pre-talk that you helped Vern Harnish write Scaling Up. So I want to talk a little bit about that. So I read, I started my local EO chapter here in 2003 in Rochester, and then we merged with Buffalo to form EO Western New York. And probably about 10, 12 years ago, I read Rockefeller Habits, which was, Vern's kickoff book, I believe.
Yep.
And it was, when I say it was game-changing, it was game-changing, right? I implemented, I think, everything into my company. Right away, the huddles, the dashboards, the war room. We did everything in that book, and it really added just structure, process, everything that the crazy manic entrepreneur needs in order to bring, I'll say, structure, which allows growth to the company. And now, so Scaling Up, as we talked about in your bio, is kind of the 2.0 of that book. So how did you get involved with Vern into writing that book?
Yeah, so I was working with Vern and Gazelles as a coach and taking on projects in India and Middle East and other places, and it got to a point where the things that we were teaching clients were just not in sync with the book. They had evolved so much from Rockefeller Habits. So I said to, hey, Vern, we need to update this thing. And I said, hey, and I'm willing to help you to do this. So we got started on it, and then the most powerful part of that process for me, aside from working on the project, but was interviewing the 50 CEOs around the world who were existing users. So that was just a wild experience. So talking to these 50 different CEOs and seeing what worked, what didn't, what were the game-changing moves for them, what were the game-changing other resources for them, and that helped us to figure out how to evolve the methodology it was absolutely amazing. It was an experience of a lifetime. Let me tell you that.
Great. Well, and I've read the book, and it's amazing. It's very intense, and a lot of times I think it benefits a company greatly to have, an unbiased coach and consultant. Whether it's a Gazelle's coach, somebody like you, to help implement and stay accountable and execute all these great practices. So a lot of the listeners of the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast are beginning to middle stage entrepreneurs. Based on your experience, you've seen a lot of these entrepreneurs, they launch, they get some traction, they grow it to a level that their gut allows, with their own instincts,
Yep.
but then they start to flounder, right? They start to need help. What are some of the first things that you would recommend an entrepreneur do in this position? I know you have, with your book, you've got, 17 principles. I mean, between some of the stuff in your coaching practice, your book, what are some of the things that you would take an entrepreneur by the shoulders and say, it's going to be okay, let's talk this thing through? What would you say to that person?
Well, there's two things. The first I'll start with is advice that I'm doing with my 15-year-old son who's starting his own business right now. And he's done a few other things, but it's the chapter in the book is called Quadruple Your IQ. And it's basically, you can study like heck and everything, which you should do. It's another chapter. But it's to find what I call 14X advisors. That's someone who's already done what you need to do 14 times successfully before. So let's just say you got a big contract and you can get some legal advice from your buddy or your fellow entrepreneur. Heck, even your brother-in-law who's a lawyer. I would say don't listen to any of them. Go and get a lawyer who is a contract lawyer for the kind of contract you're doing. So for example, if you're in construction, get a construction contract lawyer. Go find the pro who's done that contract and messed it up probably 14 times before, so they're wise. So get the best damn advice you can. And for example, with my son, he's got his own online business using Shopify. So we went and found him a coach to help him dial in all of his marketing and product selection to make his store more successful. And again, why wouldn't you? But a lot of people have this Superman hero syndrome where they think they got to do it themselves and they're more successful if they do it on their own. And unfortunately, those people sometimes make it, but usually they don't get very far. So get absolute experts at whatever challenge you have. Now, and you don't always have to hire them. The great thing about business people is they often love to help others. So if you're in a network like Avanti or other networks or any kind of network, you can reach out and find someone in the same space as you in a non-competitive location, and they will gladly share things with you and say, hey man, I'd love to get together with you and pick your brain and blah, blah, blah. Most people will also help you. So whether it's another entrepreneur who's wildly successful, way more successful than you, or an expert advisor, that's one thing a lot of people miss the mark. And what they do is they try to home bake everything. They sit down and try and figure it out themselves. Why would you do that? It makes no sense. So that's one. Get the best darn help you can. And then number two is use a framework for driving your business like Scaling Up or Rockefeller Habits. Because that framework is, I use it for companies, up to $1 billion. A couple billion is the largest one that I work with on it, that have entrepreneurial companies, founder-led, that have scaled. But even if you're doing $500,000, the framework is still very helpful because it keeps you focused on what matters most. And when you're starting out, you got 14 million ideas of what you could do. And unfortunately, when you try to implement them all, you make a mess. So get you and your team focused on what matters most. Those would be two of the top things I'd start with.
I think, you mentioned in your bio that you help with focus, and that is such a blessing and a curse, I guess. Like if we were really focused to begin with, maybe we would never start a business because we were just focused on the job that we had. But then you got to be very aware of the, what many people call the bright, shiny object syndrome, right? So you start building one mountain and it's not done yet. And then you say, oh, what's over on that mountain? You go over there, and before you know it, you got 3 or 4 mountains and you're climbing none of them. And it doesn't come natural to a lot of entrepreneurs. That's why a guy like you or a coach or a mentor would help, right?
It does. And if you look at a lot of entrepreneurs, a high percentage have ADD and or dyslexia. High percentage. Now, the advantage of ADD and dyslexia is that you're usually wired to take on huge challenges, to take on risk. And those leaders can focus when they have to, like nobody else.
Yeah.
But But with that, so I think I've actually another client of mine, Nigel Bennett, awesome guy. We have a website called Gifted, the gift of ADD and dyslexia and things like that. Because if you channel it, it's a huge asset. And things like, scaling up and other things help you to channel that energy. And you're right, trying a bunch of things and being super creative is what makes entrepreneurs successful. But at some point, that thing that makes them successful often takes them out because they dilute their business because of the lack of focus.
As Vern says, and I'm sure you do too, often the founder's greatest strength becomes the company's biggest weakness, right?
A lot. And with the entrepreneurs like that, even in the clients that I have that, they're wildly successful, I become sort of that filter on the 100 crazy ideas the entrepreneur has. And because in that 100 crazy ideas, there will be 10 winning moves. We just need a system to filter. And in some companies, we actually have systems to filter the ideas.
Yeah.
So that we don't do the 9 that are distractions. We do the one of every 10 that's an absolute winning move. So, but a program to help you and your executive focus and stay a little more disciplined makes a massive difference. The third thing is then taking care of yourself, and that's what your oxygen mask first is about. And it's about doing what you need so you stay strong and resilient, and don't just grind yourself down, because the growth of the company is your growth. To the leaders that are listening, as the CEOs, your growth is the growth of the company. If the company stops growing, it's because of you. If the company keeps growing, it's because of you. So you focusing on you being the sharpest, most effective tool possible is obviously the third, and I'd say potentially the most important one, but it's critical.
Yeah, let's dig into that because that's what your book is about, right? Your mask first, is that right?
Your oxygen mask first. You betcha.
Your oxygen mask first.
You call it a mask. Yeah.
That obviously comes from the airplane analogy where they tell you all the time, even if you have a little kid next to you, which is very counterintuitive, put your oxygen mask on first so you can take care of your kid. And, same with your company and just, people, your family, your friends, how are you going to take care of them if you are overweight and in risk of having a heart attack, or if you're stressed out and, drinking, doing drugs, or if you are not managing your time well and you're not sleeping well, so many things wellness wise that you could be doing. So a friend of mine, Jay Goltz, he's been a mentor of mine through the years. And from day one, when I started my company, he would always really push me to really kind of check all the boxes. Like business is one thing, but he's like, Dave, I can't tell you how many times I see a very successful entrepreneur, maybe they have $1 billion plus company, but their family is in shambles. They're on their third marriage, or they're extremely overweight, and they're probably not going to make it to 65 years old. So is that truly a success as an entrepreneur? In his mind and mine, it sounds like yours. No, you've over-focused on one thing while letting other things go. While, in my opinion, the truly successful business person, entrepreneur, is one that is striving to check all those boxes. Now, do you ever get it right? Probably not. Is there a perfection? But can you really put a value and effort into all those areas and do a pretty good job? I think so. I'm striving to.
Yeah, and it's hard. Like you said, you don't ever get it right. And what happens is that the dangerous part is, look, like there's the overweight, the divorce, that's a easier one to see, but it's the high performing, high functioning, quote, normal looking ones that are often in the most danger because they put so much pressure on themselves. It's not until their brain starts to implode or the company starts to slip that it starts to show up. And that's what I think is key. And one of the things that I teach in the book and in my work with clients is that, work-life balance is a stupid concept, dumbest thing ever for a leader. It doesn't work. It's impossible. And if you try to do it, you're going to feel guilty and feel worse. So ignore that concept. That's conventional wisdom. That's not made for high performers like us. What I teach people is that there's work, and then there's life, and then in the middle, there's a thing called self. And self is what holds it all together. That's you. And you need 10 to 15% of your best energy or your best oxygen to be the best self you can be. And it's not time. Time is irrelevant. But you need, so if you imagine if you had 100 units of oxygen in an oxygen canister that you could use every week for your most important things, it's how much of it gets dedicated to each of those. But because we forget about self, it ends up with very little. And then next thing you know, people have mental breakdowns, or they don't put enough into their own growth, or they just get tired, or they get sick. And every time an entrepreneur gets cooked, and it happens all the time, I'm talking stuff that would blow your mind. People that are 9.5 out of 10 intelligent, that become 5 out of 10. Like, brain function is a huge thing that a lot of people suffer from. Then there's things like panic attacks and anxiety and depression and breakdowns and all that other stuff, which also happens. And then sickness and, other issues. So what I teach people is, start off with your passion or your oxygen ratios. How much of your energy do you consciously want to dedicate to work, to your life, and then to yourself, starting with yourself? And if you don't map out self and life first, work's going to take it all, because there's always more stuff to do, guaranteed, especially if you're a highly committed high performer, which most of us are.
There's always another email to answer, right?
There is, and another project, another meeting to get to, and there's always the work is always the work will be there till the day you die. It doesn't go away. So
well, I really like you, Kevin, because you're one of the few coaches that is bringing this up. Because in a lot of the systems type of coaching, planning, and consulting, it really is not focusing on self. It's focusing on the business growth, right?
That's because those people are a train wreck themselves. You know how much, in order to be able to have these conversations, Dave, I mean, I have done hundreds of hours of coaching and work on myself. It takes a very cleaned up soul and confident person to talk about this stuff. Most people don't want to admit that they have mental health issues. No one wants to talk about this stuff. It scares the heck out of them.
Yeah.
So sorry, I jumped in there, but it's just like, I'm so passionate about it, because that's why I'm talking about it, because everyone else is afraid to, right? This is something that we all struggle with. It's part of the game. It's like we're mountaineers climbing Everest. Of course we're going to slip and we're going to get cold. That's part of the game. And in our business, of course our brains are going to get cooked because we overcommit ourselves. But yeah, it doesn't come up a lot, man. And I'll tell you, you know what? I did not intend to be an expert on this. I'm telling you. Because I work closely, very closely over many years. My clients are super loyal, and I am to them. Over many years, I get to see the struggles and the ups and downs. And because I'm so open about stuff, my clients tell me what's really happening. And most advisors don't get that close. Hey, they have a business relationship. Like, man, I'm right in there. And that's why, but I did not intend to be an expert on this stuff. And I am an expert because I've had to, because of the situations my clients are in. It's
and sounds good. You've been in, so.
Absolutely. I cooked myself the first time at 24.
Right.
Look, I'm one of those crazy driven people that, I commit myself to stuff. My skill set's here. I make this kind of a commitment, and that's where the learning and the pain comes from. And man, I keep doing it all the time. It's just the way I am. That's why I love entrepreneurs, because I am one at heart. I've lots of different businesses myself too. So yeah, I am like that. And I've cooked myself so many times and to get myself into such messes, and it's awesome.
Yep. Drug of choice, right?
That's true. That's the adrenaline and the challenge. That's 100% true. But also it's where my growth comes from.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, there's that saying, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. And a big believer in that these things are how you grow, if you embrace the situations.
Yeah.
But if you explain them away or make excuses, then you don't grow. And then your business, gets stagnant.
Yeah. Well, no, thanks for really shining light on this, and obviously writing a book about it, because it's so important. It's something that's so ignored. We talked about our mutual friend, Cameron Harold, before we started recording, and Cameron just went on Facebook talking about that he's been giving a talk, about the wellness of the entrepreneur as well, and the entrepreneur roller coaster. And he said that he's had a couple very, very successful, high level, as you say, business executives that look like they got it going on, but he mentioned two people, not by name, but two people came up to him at different times and said, thank you for that talk, because I actually have been suicidal. And you would never know. Like he said, you would never know. These guys got it going on, right? And one guy wrote him a letter and thanked him for the work that he's doing, because he just thought that he was alone in his thoughts and feelings.
Exactly.
And so everyone's going through a struggle that we don't know about. And, so you see a very successful entrepreneur, business owner, and, they could be doing $1 billion a year, but inside they could be exploding.
That's common, man. Like I can't tell you how many people told me I've saved their life.
Wow.
Yeah. And you talk about suicidal thoughts and things like that. It's way more common than you think.
Wow.
Way more. And again, but the thing is, no one talks about it. So my mission is to get this conversation onto the table. In every company that I work with, we talk about. I'm doing a speaking tour with Patrick Lencioni in Australia next year. In early March, there will be like 4,000 or 5,000 people. My focus is to talk in front of as many people as I can and share it to take away the stigma, because everyone has mental health breakdowns. It's part of the gig, but we're proud men and women, so we're not going to admit it. I have lots of clients that win big awards, Entrepreneur of the Year, things like that. One of my clients was getting a big award 3 weeks ago, an alumni award from the school he went to. And he's up there on stage giving his acceptance speech, all this stuff. He's not talking about the 3 mental breakdowns he and I worked through. Or 2 other guys. I had 2 entrepreneurs that won last year, Entrepreneur of the Year in the US. And they're both, they ran into each other at the ceremony, which is kind of funny. And they're both up there giving their acceptance speeches. And again, they're not talking about when they've been so cooked they can barely move. But these are as successful as it gets. It's normal. But the problem is, because of no one talks about it, it's not good for your brand and everything to talk about this kind of stuff. So when it does come up, people feel there's something wrong with them, that they're weak, that they're a loser or something, and then they don't get the right help. If they knew that it was just bloody normal, and I talk about having a psychologist on speed dial. You got to have, you need
Love
one,
that.
man.
Love that. Yep.
You do, because you need someone to, because look, it's like if we fall down and break our leg and have a compound fracture, there is a logical system to get that taken care of. It's called 911. Someone takes the hospital and an expert fixes it. But when our brain, the same thing happens to our brain. And when that happens, and when you're on an airplane and you feel like you're having a panic attack and you have to get off this little metal tube, or you can't leave the house, or your brain starts to get cooked, we don't have a 911, and then we end up suffering and it gets worse. And the thing is with mental health, and here's the thing you got to know, it always gets better if you get help. But when people are messed up, they don't believe that. They think they are terminal and they think they're permanently screwed. That's how it feels. That's why people like Kurt Cobain and Robin Williams and Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain decide, well, I guess I better just leave the planet then. Because they don't believe it can get better, which is not true. But in that state of mind, that is what your brain is telling you, and that's what you feel like, and so you make bad choices. And
they probably feel like they're so quote unquote unique that no one else has gone through what they're feeling. So how are they going to get fixed?
You got it. And we think we're way more special and unique than we are. We are so predictable, man. I could probably ask you 20 questions about yourself, and I could predict your next 20 years of your life. Like, wow. It's seriously, and we're not going to do that. But I don't have.
Can we do that some other time?
It would be, well, yeah, because but we are very predictable. Like, and again, the main thing, because I've worked so deeply with so many high performing leaders, the patterns are insanely predictable. Insanely, so we are very special. We are wonderful, special people, but we're not as unique, and the circumstances we get ourselves into are not as unique. So if you go back to, so what do you do about it? Well, one, you have to understand mental health. You got to there's a thing called mental health continuum, where you can look and see where you are at any given time. It's in my book. It's also online everywhere. And whether you're green, yellow, orange, or red means you're in deep trouble. You need professional help for sure. But, and we all move along the mental health piece. And obviously the other things in the book, like, and I'll tell you, like, there's a lot of damage that building a business does to a human being. And I think it's exciting if you leverage it. But you also got to learn to manage your stories about it, because, I talk about there's the woe is me mentality, and there's the wow, I just got my butt handed to me and I'm going to learn mentality. You got to be careful, because if you get stuck in the woe is me mentality, you start feeling sorry for yourself, and you get stuck and you get mentally burdened. If you're like the wow, I just lost $1 million and I'm going to learn something really good. I don't know what the heck it is. Let's figure it out and move ahead. But if you become embracing the pains that come along, it's way easier. I was sitting with a very successful entrepreneur last night. He's made multi-generational money, multi-generational. And we're talking about risk tolerance. I mean, this guy is risking, $50 million like most people would go to Starbucks. And he's like, oh, happy, and he's talking about, it's only 50 million. It should be okay. And, but it's all going to work out. And I go, well, how stressful is that for you? He was like, like 4 out of 10.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm like,
yeah.
And mathematically, it is a significant risk, but he is just so wired to it, and his attitude allows him to, like, whatever, it'll be good.
Well, it's all about his perspective, right? How he's framing it in his mind.
It is. And that's why you can have a woe is me perspective or a wow, I'm going to learn when things get weird.
Yep.
And that really, really makes a difference. So it's not all about mental health, but that is the piece that people aren't talking about that does really takes people down. And like, I have conversations about it 3-4 times a week with different people I'm working with, just in the people I work with, because it's just, it's prevalent. It's everywhere. And,
So
and it's fun stuff. If you understand it, you can learn how to get ahead of it and help other people.
sounds like it's becoming a major area of focus for your practice.
Well, it has to. I mean, I focus on, and driving strategy and scaling these companies, but companies only scale if the leaders continue to grow.
Yeah.
And this is something that limits the leaders. It's a hidden pain in the organization that people need help with to keep going. So yeah, it's because it's, the objective is to grow the company, but you gotta make sure that people are very strong in order to make that happen.
Well, and I love your approach. You're so non-judgmental, unassuming about it. And I bet that what allows people to open up and get vulnerable, because you're admitting that it's normal, it's not weird. Let's work through this, right? And maybe you've been through it yourself a few times. So I'm one of you. Let's get through this, right?
But that's the message, man, because it is normal, and when you normalize in a person, then they can relax and get to work.
Yeah.
But it's hard. All these struggles are normal, and all of them you can learn your way through. If you're committed, like most entrepreneurs are, you can learn your way through. The problem is you get bad advice from the wrong people, and that's what is the issue.
Yeah.
If you listen to conventional wisdom, and if you listen to friends and family and people who are not super successful business people, you will get conventional wisdom, which will usually hold you back. Yep. And a lot of the stuff in the book is dispelling conventional wisdom. Like, another chapter is make yourself useless, which is basically building a team so darn strong, there's not much you need to do. And people will tell you that it's not possible, the things they talk about in the book. That's because they have mediocre businesses and they're mediocre leaders. The things they talk about are absolutely possible, but you need a different mindset. And there's a lot of people who don't have that right mindset. And that chapter is just about only accepting a talent. Yeah. It's an A to stay is the philosophy. If someone is not a super high performer who fits your culture, they cannot work directly for you, no matter what. And and people like Jim Collins and other people are relentless about this. And but most people accept a lot of mediocrity, and they want to be a nice person, or it's important to them to be liked, or who knows what their issue is. But if you have a mediocre team, then you're going to have a mediocre company. That's and I am relentless about it and compassionate about treating people well. But having a high performing team is very hard to do, because most people won't make the tough decisions.
You got to have those candid conversations, right? And candid, even with yourself. Yeah.
You do. It requires a lot. And believe it or not, most entrepreneurs are very compassionate people. So giving tough feedback for most entrepreneurs is a struggle. I have another chapter that's just about giving tough feedback, because people have a hard time with it. And it does hold people back. It really does, because then you end up with people that have this potential and they're performing here. And this gap is actually your fault. Yeah. Because you're not telling them what they have to do to step up, or you're just allowing them to sit in that place of mediocrity.
I listen to the song from Michael Jackson, Man in the Mirror, every now and then, just to remind myself that, you know what, it's mostly my fault, if not 100% my fault.
It is. And you have to be careful believing that, because it'll make you feel horrible. Yeah. But there are facts behind it. And the message behind that is, you can change or influence every situation you're in. Interestingly, when I go into a lot of companies, and normally I go into them, as we were talking before, probably averaging 50 to 70, maybe 50 to 70 million, maybe 50 to 150 sometimes, some smaller, some bigger. But generally what we find, especially if the company's been around for a while, is you find a lot of people in roles where they are not performing at all. It's not even their fault. A lot of times people are in the wrong jobs. Yeah. And shuffling the deck and getting the right people in the right seats, as our friend Jim Collins tells us to do, is a very, very important piece. And, up in Canada here, hockey is a big sport for us. And one of my CEOs finally said he's built a business about 450 million. He's at right now, on his way to a couple billion. What he said is, he goes, Kevin, I finally got it. Thank you for beating me over the head with it many times. He goes, and he used hockey metaphor. He goes, if I want to be in the show, which is playing the big games in the NHL, I can't have dead weight on the ice, right? And again, he's a wicked smart guy. You don't build a business like that easily and without being intelligent. But somehow he believed he could drag along a bunch of mediocre people with him and be successful. And it's cost him millions and millions of dollars. And he finally got it. He goes, okay, I have to think like an NHL team owner. Only the best people are skating. And you have to be the best. And if there's not enough of the best people, we make some trades.
Well, that goes back to one of your heroes and a couple of the books behind you, Jim Collins, Good to Great, getting the A players on the team, right? Wrong people off the bus, right people on the bus in the right seats.
You got it. And again, you just said it beautifully, and it's really easy to say. But when you have to look another human in the eye and say, hey, man, you've been with me for 10 years, but this ain't working,
right?
That's hard. And, and my belief is, first, again, man in the mirror, as the leader, you got to make sure you've been giving them the real feedback and the opportunities to step up. That's the first box to check. You got to be fair to these people because they've been helpful to you, very helpful and loyal to you.
Yep.
But if you tell them, hey, here's the bar you have to jump over, and you give them the feedback and you give them resources to get there, if they still can't, then change their job. Because what I've got over these, it's not humane. Leaving someone in a job that they can't be phenomenal at is not good for them. They don't get to feel good going home, and everyone has the ability to be an A player somewhere. I have one of my best friends, wonderful guy. He was in industry and trying to struggle to be an A player, and he couldn't. Finally, he ended up getting a job with the government. Now, for him, it was like admitting defeat. But I tell you what, his stress went down. He stopped being such a jerk. He stopped having to have 2 drinks every day the second he came into the door, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now he gets on the bus, and he rides the bus to work every day, goes downtown, and he is the happiest he's been in his life. Now, he had to get over his whole thing admitting that he was meant to be an A player in the government, which he is, but that is his place.
Yeah.
And we're all wired to be an A player somewhere, and we got to give people chances to do that.
I mean, a lot of times you feel bad about letting somebody go, and it's never fun if you're humane. But at the end of the day, you may be doing that person. You probably are doing that person a favor, because they can go be an A player somewhere else, right? So you could say, hey, great actor, wrong role here at this company. Please go. We're gonna help you find your right role, right? And then I've done that in my company over the years, and and sometimes it's unpleasant, but I'm very nice about it. And then I've gotten calls a year or two later, thanking me for the way I handled it, and that they're excelling in their new role, and they're very happy now. So that feels wonderful after the fact.
Yeah, it's the right thing to do for your company and for them. And so ideally you can help them find that next job. If there's someone you've got a great relationship, ideally you can be a part of that process with them and gracefully allow them to hold their head high and exit. Jim Collins says you need to be relentless, not ruthless. Yeah. And allow them to maintain their dignity. You are the one that made the decision. You are the one that hired them. You're the one who didn't develop them. You're the one to put up with their poor performance. So as you're exiting them, keep that in mind and treat them accordingly. It's your mistake, not theirs. If they stole from you, obviously call the cops, make a scene, all that other stuff. But if it's just normal, a lot of things where it wasn't managed right, or you hired the wrong person, just be respectful. And they still might be upset, right? And you can't control that. But if you want to be in the show, you can't have dead weight on the ice.
Yep. I love it. And it's so great that this is all the top of your head. Your years of experience must be so valuable to your clients, because you're just going to be able to tell them what they need to hear pretty quickly. It sounds like.
Yeah, well, 20-something years, I've been working with entrepreneurs directly one-on-one. Aside from doing it myself, I put myself through school doing entrepreneurship, my own businesses and everything. But coaching entrepreneurs for well over 20 years. Yeah. So I've seen it all, and I made lots of mistakes too. I haven't been perfect. I still make mistakes. Yeah. But when you've been exposed to that many amazing people, and I'm a student of the game, like I never stop learning. I'm always curious. So, and that's, people sometimes need perspective, or they need a bit of a shake. And, the biggest things that people need, and whether it's the people that work for you or yourself, is just someone to believe and support them in what they're doing. Because it gets a bit scary sometimes. You're taking some big moves. So for a lot of people, it's believing that these things are possible, believing that your brain can get better, believing that you can have an amazing life, believing that you can build an amazing team. All these things, sometimes we just need someone to let us know what's possible. And I have a client in the restaurant business, and what he said is, he goes, Kevin, I realized that people that work for me don't even know what great service looks like. Like, they're doing the best they can from what they've seen. But if you have not been to a spectacular, let's say a Michelin star restaurant, you don't know what the best looks like. So how can you expect someone to deliver the best if they don't even know what it looks like? They're going to deliver the best they've seen. But that's different than what the best is. And our responsibility as leaders is to have to, whether it's to paint a picture or give them experiences to understand what they're trying to do, and hold that bar higher for them. And that's, whether it's, yourself with your show, or myself as a coach, or your groups or other things, is getting them to see what's possible. And a lot of people will find then a way to get there.
Yep. Set the vision so they know exactly where the bar is and what it looks like.
Yes. And let them touch it and feel it, which is something people miss out on. You can do it intellectually, but they need to experience it sometimes to be able to get it.
Excellent. Kevin, so if people are watching this instead of listening to it, they're going to see a lot of books behind your head. Yeah. Now, there, of course, I was going to say if yours wasn't there, I was going to scold you a little bit, but you're smart enough where you actually have 2 copies of your own book, so that's great. Yeah. What are some of your favorite / recommended books? For the Avanti entrepreneurs who, once again, are mostly small to medium-sized business owners.
Yeah, it depends on the situation, but look, all of Jim Collins' books are must-reads, right? I am a massive fan of his. I've been fortunate to help coordinate some CEOs go and spend time with Jim in his laboratory, to learn with him, small group one-on-one. The guy's a master, like, amazing human being. But his books are phenomenal. All of his stuff, you should be using the principles in his books, from Build to Last. How the Mighty Fall is actually my favorite, because it's how not to screw up a good business. Mm-hmm. Literally, it's his trip to the dark side, as he calls it. So all of Jim Collins' books. So Great by Choice, Good to Great, Build to Last, How the Mighty Fall, and the principles. I recommend use them all. Use every darn principle. They all work. My clients use almost all of them all the time. In terms of leadership, one of the best books I know is a book called Multipliers by Liz Weissman.
Yeah.
And it's basically, how do you double the intelligence of your people instead of inadvertently knocking them down in ways you don't even realize, or what she would call accidental diminisher. Very important book. A lot of entrepreneurs, as they get going, don't realize they're diminishing their team, and with beautiful intentions. So that book is good. Blue Ocean Strategy, to figure out where the big fat margins and profits are in your industry so you don't get commoditized. Another one called Islands of Profit in a Sea of Red Ink. So as you scale, to figure out the clients you're actually losing a lot of money on because they're higher maintenance or they draw higher amounts of resource. That is a game changer I learned about from one of the CEOs I interviewed for Scaling Up. And then probably the one that, if I look at what my clients have to do, a book called Top Grading. A better version of it's called Who. It is like, you're foolish if you don't use this methodology for hiring. Now, if you're competing with one of my clients, don't use the book, right? Definitely don't use the book.
Love the challenge, right?
Yes. Yes. But I am telling you, we host in Vancouver top grading workshops. I bring an expert from South America, 2-day role-playing intense practice for CEOs and senior executives. It is 8 of the CEOs I interviewed for Scaling Up referred to top grading as a game changer. Yeah. So after that, I'm like, okay, these guys are brilliant and successful. I became an expert on it myself. And for hiring decisions, people say people are complex and it's hard to hire good people. No, actually it's not. You just don't have the right tools. And if you use traditional HR tactics, 1 in 4 people will be an A player. With top grading, at least 3 in 4 or 3.5 out of 4 will be A players.
So why not do it? Why not do it, right?
Exactly. And it's a shockingly better approach to hiring.
Yeah.
And for my clients, every client of mine uses it for hiring. I'm not willing to work with people if they won't use it, literally. So Scaling Up as a framework, Top Grading for Hiring, Collins Books for Your Learning, Multipliers for Leadership, Blue Ocean for Strategy.
You were talking about Patrick Lencioni as well.
Yes.
Seem like a big fan of his too. His books are amazing.
Massive fan. His books are amazing. And I love about his books is you can get your whole team to read them. Like Five Dysfunctions is should be a staple of every leader.
Yeah.
When your team gets weird, how do you fix it?
And they're fables, right? They're
they're easy to read.
They're fun. Yeah.
They are. And so Lencioni's books, again, so with the companies here's the secret. With the companies I work with, we have quarterly meetings and I see most of them every quarter. We commit that we're going to read a book every quarter. And then we talk about it every quarter. And you can look around the room and see who read it and who didn't.
Oh, geez.
And then we talk about how to apply it. Now, no, internally, we do leadership training for different companies where we will take and, by webinar or first, in person, walk through a different principle once a month to keep a team growing, which works as a base piece. But getting people to read books and making that part of your regular meetings is a wonderful way to keep the team growing together in mentality.
Yep.
And obviously getting smarter. So
yep.
I could go on, but in the back of my book, there's 42 must-read books.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yep, and that's a starting point, anyways.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you one last little secret is that I don't love to read, but thank you to Mr. Steve Jobs and something called the iTunes, I can get almost all my books, including mine. I can listen to it while I drive, and I love to drive and I love to listen.
Audible is I use Audible. Good friend of mine. I love that app. I'm listening to Endurance right now. The Adventures of Ernest Shackleton.
Oh, I read that a long time ago. That was awesome.
Oh, amazing book.
Yeah, that was
amazing
a great
book.
story.
Amazing.
Yeah,
book.
actually, I should say I think I listened to it. I didn't read it. So I say read, but I mean listen. It's the same thing.
Quote unquote read, right?
Yes, but if you don't like to read, which I don't, I was the guy in college where I read the columns with the keywords and the glossary at the back. That's how I studied, right? And did study groups because I don't like to read.
Yeah.
I don't love to read, I should say. And that's why I listen to all of these books, and it's my secret to make sure I continually get sharper and stronger.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for putting your book on I want to say book on tape, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah. We're dating ourselves. Yeah.
I know. Well, Kevin, this has been massively fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, but more so for the great work you're doing. You're tackling something that most people are shying away from, as you said, because it's not great for their brand. But I always respect an entrepreneur who gives you the good, bad, and ugly, and the crashed and burned stories, and rose like the phoenix, and here's how I did it. Just to let us know that, you know what, it's normal. You're not Superman, Superwoman, and so I don't have to go at it alone too. And if I'm having problems, it's part of the journey. So I appreciate what you're doing in the world, and I wish you massive continued success.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks for what you're doing too. You're supporting people as they get going, and people need it, right? We all need it in some way.
We are launching entrepreneurs, so we'll launch them your way when they're ready to go to $1 billion.
Sounds good. Bring along.
Kevin, if people want to get in touch with you, how do you recommend?
The best is my website, lawrenceandco.com, LAWRENCEANDCO.com. There's all kinds of videos and resources on lots of the stuff I talk about. There's videos on every chapter in my book. There's even a free self-assessment you can do to see where you stand on the 17 habits I talk about in the book. Lots of stuff there to give you what you need.
Once again, your book is called Your Oxygen Mask First. I imagine it's on Amazon and every place you can buy a book.
Yep, you got it.
Very good. Kevin, thanks again. And I have a feeling we're going to keep in touch.
Sounds good. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you, Avanti Entrepreneurs. Appreciate your time. And hoping that we're able to help you today. Reach out to Kevin. Send him an email. Go to his website and learn more about what he's doing. And I'm going to buy his book right after this show, and I suggest you do as well. Thank you for listening. Make sure to check us out on the web. You can listen to this interview again, and we have show notes, and we have hundreds of other interviews. Been doing this for 2 years, folks, over 2 years. And it's your ongoing learning partner. That's what we want to be. Thanks again. Once again, all that is at AvantiEntrepreneurGroup.com. Make it a great day and stay awesome.
Thank you for listening. Head over to AvantiEntrepreneurGroup.com for show notes and more helpful advice from entrepreneurs like you. Continue to find your entrepreneurial rhythm at the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast.